All right, Rob, let's go to yesterday was the day of upsets. My, oh my. Upsets and near upsets. And the Jets beating the Philadelphia Eagles, the previously undefeated Eagles, for the first time ever, was obviously a big upset. But probably the biggest was because many people viewed them as the best team in the league. And they were coming off a 32-point demolition of the Dallas Cowboys, was the San Francisco 49ers going to Cleveland and losing 19-17 to the Browns, but not only to the Browns, Rob, to the Browns who were manned by their third-string quarterback, P.J. Walker.
That's why everybody thought it was a lock. Like, that looked like a lock, but then, Chris, you get some injuries and some missed field goals, and before you know it, and then the MVP of the league doesn't play nearly as well as he had been playing.
Well, he's not the MVP anymore.
I was going to say that came crashing down, Chris, real quick, didn't it?
Yes.
How many times does that happen where we talked about it earlier this year? Even, you like Micah Parsons the first two games, and then they got demolished. The defense got killed. It's amazing, like, how hard it is to Russell Wilson. Remember a couple of years ago, what was that, during the COVID year, Chris, when he was off to that great start for about 6 weeks? I'm just saying, it's hard. The guys who win MVP, you got to sustain. Like, you can't have that many stinkers. You can't.
I think this year, and I think I have felt like it's changed almost weekly. Like, early on, I thought it was Micah Parsons. Then, like you said, he had a bad game. I thought it was Tua. And then Tua's thrown some interceptions. And so I started thinking, you know what? Especially after that beating of the Cowboys, although he didn't play a huge game, and that was the week before, I thought Christian McCaffrey was in the hunt. And then I thought Purdy was leading after that game against the Cowboys. And now I would go back to Tua because, Rob, no one has been consistently great.
Right, but Tua has put up numbers.
Josh Allen hasn't. Lamar Jackson hasn't. Burrow obviously hasn't. There's McCaffrey, has averaged 3 yards a game his last two games. Purdy obviously just had a bad game.
That ain't MVP, right?
No. And Micah's slowed down. He's not even the defensive player of the year, probably.
No.
So, yeah, I think right now it's Tua. But you mentioned Purdy, and, Rob, he was bad. He had the worst game of his NFL career. He was 12 for 27, 125 yards, and one touchdown, one interception. His touchdown was like a little shovel pass, little, ditch off, drop off to McCaffrey at the goal line. And his passer rating was 55.3. And, Rob, because Deebo Samuel got hurt early in the game, and then Christian McCaffrey got hurt and didn't play anymore, didn't play most of the second half, there is some school of thought out there that without those two stars, Brock Purdy got exposed. Is that your thinking, or you think that's going too far and too fast?
When you say exposed, it's like no one's saying he's a fraud.
And that's what exposed implies.
Yeah, that's why you would be like a total fraud, Chris. Like they pull off your wig and your fake nose. You know what I mean? Like, that's a fraud. Like, that's not who we thought he was.
Right.
So we're not talking about that. But I think it did drive home the point about the weapons he has around him, and it doesn't mean that he can't utilize them and play. But we talk about this all the time, Chris, and we've seen it with Mahomes. I've seen it with Aaron Rodgers. You remember there was one stretch, Devontae Adams wasn't around, they kept winning.
Rodgers was 7-0 without
at
Devontae
one point
until his last year in Green Bay.
Right. You know what I mean? So that was like one of those moments, Chris, where you looked at it and go, how'd they go to the desert without Devontae and without so-and-so and so, and they won the game? And Mahomes last year, was able to win it, and then you would be hard-pressed to really
without Tyreek Hill.
Right, and look at the other receivers and go, how did he get this done? and I think now the conversation is just that Brock Purdy isn't that guy. And that doesn't mean he can't be there or he might turn into that, Chris. But these are some of the questions that people have been saying for a while. You know, like he's good, but he ain't like the guy that leads this team. He's a part of it, but he's not the leader. Did you take that away? I mean, right? Not a fraud, but just
I certainly don't think he's a fraud. I think he's a good player. I was not ready, as you know, to say he's elite. I think we got to watch and see.
Who said he was elite? Did we talk to somebody?
Some people were throwing out there, Rex Ryan on ESPN said he's the next Joe Montana. And some people were throwing out Montana.
Yeah. See, that's why it's always
Kurt
like,
Warner and people like that. And I think that was going way too far, because obviously it was just too short of a sample size. Now he looked great, but I'm not like I took it as I don't even feel like it was because Debo and McCaffrey got hurt, because they weren't playing that well before McCaffrey got injured. Now, they marched down early in the game and scored, and Debo was in. But after, then he got hurt. But after that, they struggled even with McCaffrey in there. So I think, Rob, what it was a bad game. And we knew it was coming, right? The guy had not had a bad game in his first 12 starts. The guy had the greatest passer rating in the history of football. He was on track to break Aaron Rodgers' record for passer rating in a season. You knew that was likely to end. He had the career highest passer rating. So all of that was likely to end. The game he played yesterday, there's not a quarterback who's ever donned an NFL uniform and who played who hasn't had a game like that. All the best players you can mention, they've had games like, heck, Josh Allen threw 3 interceptions on opening night against the Jets, and they lost to him without Aaron Rodgers. Yesterday, Jalen Hurts had 3 interceptions. It was bad. So these games happen, and I get that those guys have built up, more of a resume.
I was going to say that's the only difference is like.
Well, but the difference ain't that everybody, even early on when they hadn't built up the resume, they had bad games. So
yeah, but when
it's not unusual for a guy to go out and play like that.
Yeah, it's not about him having a bad game. It's when you look and you say to yourself, what just happened here? It's not just that he had a bad game. Is, again, as long as you're always going to have the tag of Mr. Irrelevant and that's where you were drafted and people can't believe where you're going or where you are and what's happened, every time things go bad, they'll always go back to that. Those other guys you mentioned came from storied college programs, were drafted high, and people had expectations for them. So I think that's why, along with that, Chris, not just having a bad game, but that their body of work and what people think about them going into that, they could say, oh, yeah, he just had a bad day at the office. There will be people who will say, I've been waiting for this when he doesn't have all these unbelievable weapons. Right. And now look at what he is. I'm just saying that and I think that's
started so fast.
Right.
Like he started tremendously. And obviously, Brady obviously was a lower pick, but nobody really was saying he was all that until he won his Super Bowl his rookie year. But even then nobody was necessarily saying he was elite and a superstar. It took a little while for Brady to get that tag. But I think too, Rob, it wasn't just, Purdy was bad. Like I said, worst game of his career. But give Cleveland some credit. Cleveland is the best defense in the league, statistically. Rob, they're on pace they are currently allowing the fewest yards per game in the last 53 years.
Since that Ravens team?
No, 53 years.
Right.
Since 1970, the Purple People.
But you know what I meant?
Are the Minnesota Vikings. So they are averaging, they're allowing 121 yards a game passing. That's incredible. It's the best in the league by like 40 yards. They're allowing 200 yards total. That's best in the league by 60 yards. And Rob, Jim Schwartz used to be the head coach in Detroit.
Right.
He owns Kyle Shanahan. Owns him. He's 8-1 against Shanahan when both of them are either head coach or a coordinator. And Shanahan's teams, he's the boy wonder. He's the genius, the offensive guru. His teams average 15 points a game when facing Jim Schwartz's clubs. And San Francisco was averaging about 33 a night this season and with Purdy playing. So there were a lot of factors last night. And one of them was that Purdy didn't play well, no doubt. Although we got to say this, to be fair. As bad as he played, Rob, at the end of the day, he did lead that drive that got them in position to win the game. And it would have just been one of those ugly wins, one of those nights where you didn't have it as a team, you didn't have it as a quarterback, but you found a way to win. He marched them down about 52 yards for a 41-yard field goal, and the rookie Jake Moody missed it. So that was that. But yeah, I do have to say, even playing poorly, he did come through and do his part at least to get them down there for a potentially game-winning field goal.